because I did some coaching. It has a special resonance to it to be known as a coach. I'll tell you that right now, leader of people. And we have kind of coaches up here right now with us up. These are the head coaches, okay, that we have here. And I stand in awe, actually, at your mere presence, okay? And I'm honored to be able to talk to you today, and also for you to share some of your secrets with us and how you got to where you are today. And this is an all-star panel, I might say. And on the far right of your far right, is Steve Moynihan of HMY Yachts, my ex-boss. He is president and CEO of HMY, entered the marine industry at the age of 19 during the 1975 Miami Boat Show. I bet that's a good story. Steve co-founded HMY Yachts. Today is the sole owner, operates 13 sales offices, 4 service locations, 90 dedicated sales support and service people. For 44 years, the company has been at the forefront of our industry. And then we have George Jousma. And George is everybody knows George, two-time president of Viva. And George is the Italian Yacht Group, more than another 40 years of experience here, representing the Italian yachting sector in the Americas. He became president of Allied Marine Richard Bertram Yachts in 1994 and grew the company from one product line of yachts to 200 people in 9 locations and sales revenues of over $200 million at that time. And then we have Jeff Stanley, Gilman Yachts, another well-known face and name. And he began his brokerage career after graduating from the Florida Institute of Technology. He's going to tell us a little bit about that later. Serves as president of Gilman Yachts, remains active in brokerage and averaging about 30 closings a year. That's admirable. And this places him at the forefront of our successful brokers in the industry. And also, Jeff, of course, is the keeper of the treasury at EBA. He watches over your membership fees and our sponsorship fees, and he's tough with a dollar. I can tell you, he can stretch it too. So welcome. And then we have, I've already introduced Bob Allen. I don't know whether I have to reintroduce him or not, but we just know Bob Allen, Robert Allen Law Firm, big supporter of EBA and all that. So here we are, and Mike Ditka said, success isn't permanent and failure isn't fatal. So I want to ask you, and I'm sure everybody would be interested to know from you guys, what is your definition of success? It's this amorphous, shapeless thing that can mean different things to different people. So let me start over there with you, Steve. What is your definition of success?
I think that the continuity of the business, of course, is an indicator, but the fact that our team who could go anywhere they want to go in this industry have chosen to spend 10 and 20 and 30 years dedicating their life and their career to our company. And in addition, one of the things I'm most proud of is that we have a number of situations that exist today, and my hope is they will continue, where people who've worked for our company for all these years have recommended that their children and grandchildren come to work for us. And you certainly wouldn't do that in a situation where you felt like you were getting hornswoggled in any way, and you recommend to your flesh and blood, people you love more than anybody else in the world, that they come and be part of the same team. So that's an ingredient that I think is
well, having been there
part of our success, yes.
Experiencing it, I know that you have a system that engenders loyalty, and you treat your people right and all that sort of thing. So that's a great legacy to have when the grandkids are starting to come to work for you and all that.
Well, not yet. The oldest one will be 13 in January, so we're going to let him get out of middle school before we bring him in.
Oh, yeah. I'm going to ask you whether or not you're going to recommend he go into the yachting business. That's going to be my last question. George, how about you?
I would say, from a personal standpoint, probably one of my determinations of success, and I say this often to people in social environments, but I've never really had a period in my life where work was work. I've always enjoyed, for sure, sometimes it's been more difficult than others. We've had the ups and downs of it. It's been more challenging, but I can't tell you a day that I wasn't looking forward to go to work, and that would, to me, is probably what I would say. I'm thrilled with the opportunity the industry's given me, and has been a great path for me from that aspect.
Weren't we
Work is
lucky to
fun.
be in this business? I say this almost every time I get the chance to get the microphone, to be able to dabble in this business with wealthy folks and help them realize their dream and have a good time doing it too. And that is one of the secrets of success. Jeff?
Maybe a little more personally, I'd say being able to go to sleep at night, not having to look over my shoulder, having the respect of my peers, having a loyal following of clients. Just that sums it up.
Yeah, and Bob? Let's assume you're successful before I ask that question, okay?
I was sitting here and thinking about that. Are you ever successful? There's always another mountain to climb. I think success is never being satisfied. That's part of success. And I was reflecting, I think success is being able to be proud of what you've done. And in my case, I left the law firm after 11 years and started this law firm 30 years ago. And there's 25, 26, 27 people who can pay their mortgages, buy houses, buy cars, educate their kids. There's one lawyer who works for me. She's a partner. She went to Europe 4 times last year. And then I hired her while she was still in school. And so to be able to help people live full lives, I think that's what success is for me.
That's the coaching angle right there, pal. It is, for sure. And you know, it's funny, I said this at the last web seminar we had. I was reflecting on the fact that I was going to Monaco for the yacht show. And I was saying to myself, oh, you gotta go to Monaco again. And then I grabbed myself by my own lapels and shook myself a couple times. What are you, crazy? Just as your partner or attorney, 4 trips to Europe last year, not a bad deal. Was there a pivotal moment? Was there something that happened in your life that turned you on to the yachting business? I'd like to hear about those. I'd like to hear anecdotally what that might have been. I'm going to start right back with you since you have the floor.
It was an accident. I left a large law firm, and Bertram had just gone through bankruptcy, and they had been acquired by an Italian operation and a diversified holding company. And their lawyers 30 years ago were the London office of a U.S. law firm. And their rates were at least 3 times what mine were. And I knew a little bit about boats. I had a boat. My first 2 cases in the first month I was at the law firm I was involved warranty claims against Hatteras. You know, they have different ownership now, so nothing against anybody, but they were warranty claims. And so I got introduced to this Italian guy, and he asked me if I could do some work. And it basically started riding, I think, a 30-foot Bertram up the Miami River. And that was the pivotal point that turned it. I started doing more and more work for them. They asked another big law firm for some work. It took them 8 months to do it, and they never got it done. But I had done something exactly like that. So I knew I could get it done really quickly. I got it done not in 8 months. I got it done like in 8 hours. I charged them a fortune for me. For them, it was a pittance. And ever since then, I've been ripping people off and
I can attest to that.
but creating value, right?
I think that's the imposter syndrome coming out there, pal. All right. Jeff, I was going to ask you about what pivotal moment. I don't know whether you want to answer that or not, or whether you want to reflect on an individual that may have played a role to help you get into the yachting sickness.
Well, it was October of 1980, and I had just finished my short career as a fish farmer, about 9 months, and I decided I wanted to be a yacht broker.
If they relate, okay.
So I knocked on about 25 doors up and down 17th Street. Everybody said, no, we're not hiring. You have no experience. I ended up, I went to Marina Bay, went to a little houseboat, had a little wood sign, said HMY. Talked to Shirley. Shirley said, we're not hiring. So, I decided, having had boats in my family all my life, we had a 43 Viking double cabin. I knew Bill Healy. I went down to the Viking dealer, and when I say Viking dealer, don't immediately think of Steve. Steve was the king of posts back then. I'm not sure he could spell Viking. He was all focused on posts and doing very well at it. So I got to this place called Nautical Yacht Basin, which became Harbor Town, and I tried to get a job. And they said, well, what have you sold? I said, well, I've sold little orange fish for 3 cents, but I've sold a lot of them. And that didn't work. So I called Bill Healy, and I had been to the factory a couple of times. He knew who I was, and told him what I wanted to do. He said, well, let me make a call. So I got the job, and as I said, it was October, mid-October. So 2 weeks later, I am faced with my first boat show at Bahia Mar. And I'll tell you, the Bahia Mar boat show, Fort Lauderdale boat show then, wasn't on both sides of Bahia Mar. It was like 1.5 sides of Bahia Mar. It wasn't really that big a deal. So I was in my blue blazer and my gray flannel pants I had to buy, and I parked across the street from the boat show, which, no problem, the city lot, plenty of parking. Walked over to the Viking display about 9:45, show opens at 10. And our business wasn't quite as professional back then. There was no gatherings like this. There was no real structure, and everybody else in the company was either hungover or missing in action. And I'm the first guy who walks up, and it's 15 minutes before the show opens. And I get greeted by Bill Healy, and he is not happy. If you know Bill Healy, he's about this tall, and he's Irish, so he turns a little red when he gets upset, and he tends to get about this far away from your face, and I got a dressing down like I had never had before. And
Tell them who Bill Healy is.
what's that?
Tell them who that is. Identify Bill.
About Bill? What he said?
No, who is he?
Oh, Bill Healy. Bill Healy, owner of Viking. Most people know that. So I went about the show, and I, got over my first day jitters, but honestly, I probably had first day jitters at the Lauderdale show for 20 years after that, because he set me straight, and I'm sure I learned a few things to become a better yacht broker because of that little dressing down. But if anybody knows Bill Healy, they know what he's like. He's actually an amazing guy that, correct me if I'm wrong, Steve, but when he was active working, he would be saying goodbye to every shop worker on the floor as they left every day. And they probably knew their names, right?
Yeah, very personal involvement.
Yeah, good guy.
George, pivotal moment?
Oh, I don't know that I had a specific moment, but there's 3 that kind of come to mind. One, before it all started, I was born and raised in Chicagoland area and in the Great Lakes. My parents were boaters, but there was a family business, and there was just an assumption I was going to go in the family business. And it sold when I was 18, and I kind of went, oh shit, now what am I going to do? And my passion and love for boats was there, so it morphed into a career into boats. And then that first 10 years was in the Great Lakes area, and I guess I had a God-given talent for numbers and accounting, which is sometimes unusual in a salesperson. So I was being dragged into doing more managerial things, that type of stuff, and ultimately, I guess in my young 30s, kind of chose a path or fell down the path of not selling myself so much, but as running companies or running sales staffs and so forth. And then the last moment would be 5, 6 years ago when I parted ways with San Lorenzo and was able to start a business with my son. And now, we're entrepreneurs together, and it's great to be able to work with your child, and he's productive, and he'll probably keep me relevant for a lot of years.
I have that grand experience myself. It's a wonderful thing. Steve?
I started pretty young. I got a job at the Miami Boat Show working for a fledgling multiple listing company in 1975. And the guy who owned it was a guy named Russell Strongman, and he was a visionary who had, a great forecast for what this industry would do. He was a small boat dealer on the Hudson River and had a small place in Fort Lauderdale, but he envisioned the fact that the multiple listing system, instead of being binders and books and copying machine, was going to be something automated, and we had a very rudimentary random access filing system that was all lights and colors and rattles, and I did that for 2 years, and I made $286 twice a month, which is not the same as $286 every 2 weeks. So I know a little bit about numbers too. But Russell was indeed a visionary, and he was a very supportive guy. He got me over, if you can imagine, I had what he called call reluctance. My mouth would get dry and I couldn't talk and I couldn't pick up the phone and call people, and he got me over that. And then when I told him I really needed to make more money, he was very encouraging, and as a mentor, helped me, just get into commission sales. And I started at the Miami Boat Show in 1977, and away we go.
There was a story about you moving into a trailer down on State Road 84 too that somebody told me.
I didn't want to pay rent, so I bought a house trailer for $1,700. I drove here from Birmingham, Alabama in a Volkswagen Bug with a little Sears trailer behind it with my stereo speakers and my 2 little suitcases, and that's where I started out.
That's
life in
fantastic.
Broward County.
One thing to note here is that they're humble beginnings. Nobody handed them a bag of money. My dad sure never did. I told my dad I was getting ready to go to college. He said, "Good luck, son." He didn't say anything about paying tuition. He just said, "Good luck, son." And, in my beginnings, I had that. I often talk about the difference between want and need. And need is the much more driving force, because if you can want something, but if you need something, that's the stronger word to use. And for me, it was basically, I was teaching school, coaching baseball. I was making $800 coaching the baseball team. It worked out to about 60 cents an hour for coaching the baseball team. And I had 3 kids in diapers, and I couldn't make ends meet. And I literally stumbled into the yachting business. But I had set out in my own mind, I had said, if I could just make $50,000 a year, if I could only make $50,000 a year, I would want for nothing. I would be set for life. And went to work for a guy named Bill Whittemore in the yacht management business. And the day that I showed up for work, he was walking out the door on his way to Newport. And I said, "What do I do?" He said, "Sit over there and start answering the phone." I said, "But who's going to call?" And he said, "Just start answering the phone, you'll learn." And what I learned that I was able to do, and we're going to talk about specialties later on, was I could talk to wealthy people. For some reason, I could talk to wealthy people and say no to them when they didn't want to hear no, or when they wanted to hear me say yes, and going up against them on that basis. So that was and luck and fate is so important, because each one of you fell into something kind of at the right moment and the right time, you see. And, but I am also a firm believer in what Branch Rickey, the old owner of the Dodgers, said, that luck is the residue of design. So if you are looking to get better and do something else, design your pathway, as I discussed earlier in my opening comments today. But I want to move along and get some more stuff from these guys about maintaining a balance. Now, I'm helping a company right now that is, the company's managing them, okay? And they're not able to manage their own growth, and it's been meteoric, so I'm working with them on a consulting basis. But how do you separate your personal from your business, or do you not separate your personal? How do you maintain that balance, Bob?
Well, I didn't used to live as balanced a life as I do now. I was the first guy in and the last guy out, and I worked every weekend for years. And I remember being on vacation in the Turks and Caicos Islands with my wife, and she'd get up at a vacation hour, and I'd be up at 5 working. And I came across this article about a consulting firm that says, "Are you unhappy with your professional life? Does your work own you, or do you own your work?" And that was the beginning of the change. And I said to my wife, I said, maybe I'll go to this next year. And she said, no, when's the next one? You're going now. And so as a result of that, they required you to write down your life objectives. And, who writes down their life objectives? Very few. Usually it's on your tombstone or something. Somebody else wrote them for you when you're dead. But they required you to write your life objectives and then to write a short plan of how you could implement your life objectives through your law firm. And what I realized was, you were talking about sleeping at night, Jeff. The only way to sleep at night well as a lawyer is to commit to being ethical. Now, being ethical isn't always clear, but in law there's a code of ethics you have to abide by, and then you have to live by your own moral code. So I decided to rebuild my law firm. And we were going to commit first to being ethical so we could sleep because, my office was in Miami. There's a lot of stuff happening in Miami. It's kind of moved to Lauderdale now, but so we had to be ethical. And then 1 micron below ethical was a commitment to excellence. Because I think life isn't worth living if you're going to be mediocre. And so I wanted everybody in my firm to commit to being the best they could be. Now, that doesn't mean working harder than anybody else. It means trying as hard as you can. It's like my dad told me when I was a kid. He said, do all the push-ups you can and then do 3 more, right? So I wanted to have, I wouldn't feel good. In the law firm that I had come from before, it didn't feel like everybody was doing all the push-ups they could. They were trying to cut from, doing a few less, and when nobody was looking. And so I didn't want to live in that environment. And I also knew that making as much money as I could not be my objective. Because I could make money by working harder, or maybe by not being, blinking a little bit every once in a while. So I decided that living a balanced life was more important than making money. But if we committed to those things, that we would make, we would make a good living, and it's worked out. So anyway, that's kind of the formula at our firms: ethics, excellence, and a balanced life. And so at the firm that I had come from, they required people, this doesn't mean anything to non-lawyers, but to bill 2,100 hours. And I decided that I was going to pay based on not 2,100 hours, but 1,200 hours. And then if you worked more than that, you made a lot more money. But you didn't have to. You could coach your kid's baseball team. You could go to your kid's show at the school, the ballet or whatever. You could live that way. And then, at different periods in your life, you got to be with your kids. Other periods of your life, they're not around. You want to work harder, and you want to go to Europe, all the shows, you can do it, and you can make a bundle of money. So anyway, that's it.
Yeah, and it's, I don't know, I'm sure there are a lot of people out here that are saying to themselves, I'm not maintaining that balance. So, and it's so important because you've got to, otherwise you become obsessed. And also a point you made about money, and that is, I used to preach to my sales team all the time, don't think about the money, think about the deal. Get the deal done, the money will come on its own. But if you focus on the money and all that, you start to make bad decisions, or you start cutting this or cutting that. So it's always about the success side of it. Put the deal together, and then you'll get paid. Jeff?
Probably sounds odd, but I can't work from home. I guess I don't want to work from home. I don't have a home office. I separate the two. When COVID came, I bought myself a scanner. I still haven't got it to work right, so it doesn't matter. I can take a picture of it. I can do DocuSign. But
How about your telex? You still have that in your office?
I threw the fax away. I threw all the house phones away. But just keeping the two separate, I think, is important. Do I miss a deal now and then because yeah, but hopefully what I was doing was more fun than the deal. So.
I see your Facebook pictures, okay? George?
It's changed a lot over the years. I think about it
Yeah.
when I would have been in my late 20s, early 30s, and I was still in the Midwest, but had the opportunity to come down and do a lot of boating in the Bahamas with my then wife and some clients. And, there were no cell phones, just beginning of faxes at that point, but I would spend 6 weeks and was able to call my office one day a week and check in, and they'd tell me, here's a list of your phone calls, and people at that time were satisfied with the idea that, oh, George is out of town, he calls in once a week, we'll give him the message and he can call you back. And it's hard for me to believe that that's my life and where we are today, and trying to find a balance today is a lot more difficult because we all have cell phones in our hands, in our pockets, and our clients all know we have cell phones in our hands and in our pockets. And it's tough to tell, people, loved ones, that no, I can't make that tonight because, last minute somebody came and we have to shift here and have to go there. But you have to find that balance, and you have to be open-minded about it. And you have to make some difficult decisions at some point, because without the balance, you won't have any personal life, to be honest. So that's my comments.
Gotcha. Steve?
Well, years ago, it was a lot different, and I was first in, last out, like Bob said, and that was just the culture at the time. It's a long time ago. And what we've been able to do is assemble a really good team at the company, and we empower those team members to make decisions and run the company and take care of so many aspects of it that I used to have to do. But of course, the company was much smaller. We didn't have as many people. We didn't have as many offices, didn't have as many responsibilities. But we've empowered the team to do it, and it takes a tremendous load off of me, because at this stage, I have 4 adult daughters and 12 little magnets that that attract me to do lots of different things with these little grandkids, and it's easier. I still take calls. I don't duck. If I'm away for a week or 10 days, it doesn't bother me to pick up, to answer the phone or return a text or call a guy and walk them through an issue. But it's mostly due to the team back home that I am able to get as much balance time as I do take.
It's funny, I was at a sales meeting that Steve was hosting up in Palm Beach, and I guess there were maybe 20 or 25 brokers in the room or something like that, and one of the brokers said, I need the name of this biking, what year it was, and can somebody give me that name? So everybody was just looking at each other, and I saw Steve close his eyes, look up to heaven. I don't know if that's where the answer came from or not, but boom, that was the SS Impromptu, just like that. And then I learned later on that he has a most amazing memory. So hearing these anecdotes and hearing these stories, and I go back to like these are etched in your mind. It's great stuff to hear and all that. So we touched upon ethics and integrity and all that. I just simply want to ask you. I mean, there are bad players, as Melanie said earlier. There are bad players in our industry. I think the percentage of our bad players is probably about the same as the percentage of bad players in any other industry. But how do ethics and integrity, what role do they play in the way your business is run? Bob? You touched upon that. I don't want to. You can elaborate if you would.
Well, I think as a younger lawyer, I used to fight with people more. I would, now we have litigators that do that, right? But they do it with a smile. I think I've been able to develop a relationship with virtually, I would say 95% or 90% of the law firms in the world and lawyers who do these things in the world, that where we just trust each other. There may be a little situation. As a lawyer, you're not paid to trust, and you can't trust. But you don't trust on like fundamental things, but in order you trust each other to help the deal get done, right? And to help each other see what the reality is. I like to say you learn the most from people, those that you disagree with. And So there's lawyers that I may disagree with, but yet I trust their word. And we get deals done where if we were fighting, we wouldn't. So does that answer your question?
Absolutely, yeah, sure. And I'm going to go to you, Jeff. I know that you might not want to answer this, but I'm going to ask you anyway because I know being our treasurer, you're one of the most ethical and guy full of integrity and all that kind of stuff. And is there a mantra in your firm? In other words, do they understand that's ethics and integrity? That's our mission. That's how we operate.
Yeah, there's a couple simple platitudes, like, treat other people the way you want to be treated. I mean, that's kind of elementary.
The golden rule.
If you tell the truth, you never have to remember which version of the truth you said 6 months earlier. It's kind of silly stuff. And if you're selling a boat to somebody and you're faced with a decision, I can go this way and I can sell this boat to this guy today, or I can go this way and I can sell this guy 5 boats. And use your head.
George?
Yeah, I've been around a lot of companies, run a number of companies, and I think there's a general statement that most companies take on the personality of the person at the top. And, and it sort of trickles down. And so I'd like to think that my reputation speaks for itself. I'm sure there's somebody who's on the wrong side, but I know a lot of people in this room, a lot of the maritime attorneys, a lot of my colleagues that we've done business over the years, and I can't think of one I can't pick up the phone and call and say, how do we want to handle this situation? And actually one that sticks out with me, and it's probably 20 years ago, Steve and I were having one of those phone calls, and he said to me, listen, George, he said, customers come and go. You and I are going to be doing this for a lot of years. And I still remember you saying that, as in, we need to be taking care of each other ethically through this situation, because we're going to be doing more and more business together.
That's a fantastic story. Steve?
Well, to that point, we have a pretty unique industry in that we rely on our competition, our competitors, for our inventory. It's not the same way if you go into the Lexus dealership and they don't have what you want, that guy doesn't put you in his car and drive you down the street and try and sell you a Mercedes. You're gone. If we don't have what a customer wants in our own stable, the first thing we do is call our friends and close colleagues, and we depend on each other for inventory, thus paydays, thus revenue, thus profit, and so on. Yeah. So, a reminder to the younger self is just remember that we're going to be here for a long time. I didn't know I was going to be here for 44 freaking years, but here we are, and we're still, enjoying these relationships.
Yeah.
When I was first married, I didn't go on a honeymoon. I went away for 3 days to Marco Island in my new Toyota Celica Supra GT that I bought my wife, Faith. And I was right in the middle of a deal on a big boat, 24-foot Sea Ray with a fly bridge. Do you know they made a 24-foot Sea Ray with a fly bridge? And I had committed to be in Marco Island for these 3 days, and the only day that this guy could sea trial the boat was on a particular Saturday, and I was going to be gone. So I had to impose upon the listing agent, who was a real hard ass, Jeff Staley. He said, can you do me a favor and take my customer for a ride on your boat while I'm away for 3 days with my new wife? And he did. So that was in 1981. So that was 42 years ago. And we've continued those good dialogues and deals and collaborations all these years.
That's fantastic. And when I first got in this business, Bill, I keep saying Bill Whittemore. I know some of you know him. He's still alive, as a matter of fact. But he said to me, he says, I got one bit of advice for you. He didn't say much, but when he spoke, I listened. He said, you're going to be in a business where, the yacht business, where you can figure out all kinds of ways to steal money from your clients. He said, it'll be easy, too. He said, don't do it. He said, if you do that, then you're going to be like all the other criminals that are in the yachting business, that select few people, and you don't want to be in there. And so to this day, I've always tried to operate with honesty and integrity, just like that. So the takeaways here are that never be satisfied. You know, the old saying is, when you're green, you're growing, and when you're ripe, you're rotting. Okay. And so never be self-satisfied. You heard that these guys have changed over the years, too. Well, I wasn't always that way. We heard it 4 times. But that means they've evolved. And that's what you need to do as well, is evolve with the industry. Operate with integrity, operate with honesty, be good to your clients, make sure that your company is following your company mantra along those lines, or your law firm, where it might be. Stick to your values. And that's the takeaways that we have from here. But I have one more question I want to ask, and that is that we received a question overnight about what advice would you give women in a male-dominated yachting industry where probably 99% of the brokers are men, and we have some really fantastic lady brokers. But what advice might you give to a woman trying to make it into the yachting business, Bob?
I have 4 sisters. I don't have any brothers. I have a mom with a very big personality.
Sorry about that.
who just turned 95 3 days ago, by the way.
Saw that.
My faculty advisor in college was a PhD from Oxford, a woman. And I think the women who work in our law firm will testify it. I can't use vulgar terms here because I don't want to be a bad example, but I don't give a flip whether you're a woman or a man. I don't care. And I don't think you should either. I think you just go out and do your thing. And if somebody's an ass to me, I don't care if they're a man or a woman, I tell them they're an ass. If they're an ass to you and you're a woman, tell them they're an ass. Don't put up with anything. I mean, just don't put any, as soon as you start to think, you know, you're being discriminated because you're a woman, it's like, just be yourself. And, you know, we get deals done, and the women partners, the head of our litigation team is here, Serena. She's a woman. Our head of our
Wow, they're surprised.
So, I mean, what the heck? Just do your thing and don't worry about it. That's what I would say. As soon as you start worrying about other stuff, things get messed up, and I think you get a chip on your shoulder. So my advice is just forget about it and just steamroll them and be better than the dude, but be better than the chick. You know, just be better. That's how you win. So that's it.
Jeff, tell us quickly about Jane Buffington.
I was selling a boat with Jane, and I'm going to answer your question first. The product knowledge is important. Maybe specializing, you know.
Annie Avery.
I've specialized in a couple of kinds of boats. Steve has specialized in a couple of kinds of boats. Most of your boats are Italian. But, you know, there are a lot of women in the business, and there are a lot of very successful women in the business. You know, Jane Buffington was one of the probably earliest women in the business, I think. And delightful lady. I remember I was selling a boat with her, and I asked her, you know, what kind of engines it had. And, you know, we didn't have the MLS. Her answer was big white ones. You know, so she may not have had the product knowledge, but she had the charisma or whatever. She was very, very successful.
Jane I love her. The late Jane Buffington, she's the grande dame of the industry. She didn't know anything about yachts, but she could sell. I'll tell you what, she could sell. And you're right about specialty. Joel, is Jason Dunbar still here? You probably remember Joel Potter. Joel Potter specialized in 30-foot cruising sailboats. And, you know, there's not a lot there, a 30-foot cruising sailboat, but he sold a couple of hundred of them a year. And everybody that was looking for a cruising sailboat was to go to Joel Potter to get the information on that boat and all that. George?
First of all, I'd say welcome, and secondly, I'd say, say this of women, but of all colors, shapes, so forth. I think there's a huge opportunity in our industry, because if you look at our client base at this point, it's diverse. And I feel like our industry needs to match what our client base is. And it's not necessarily, Kevin Merrigan used to say to me, you know, that the dream 20, 25 years ago was, you remember the New York Yacht Club, the Ocean Reef Club, and you had a 53 Hatteras going up and down the East Coast between, and you know, if you look at what's going on in today's world, it's diverse and there's a lot of opportunity. And I think the four of us here would be happy to sit down with anyone that wants to hear and listen and learn and help them.
Steve, finally?
Whether it would be someone who's interested in the yacht sales business or just any position, what I try to impart is, listen, this is a level playing field. Everybody's welcome. Come on in. If we hire you, you're part of a big team, and it's not a woman or a man or a teenager. You're part of a team. And so now your job is to put your head down and outperform and take advice, but it is a level playing field. There's no penalty for any of your inexperience. Otherwise, we wouldn't be hiring you. You're going to bring something to the dance, and we bring something to the dance as well.
I'm sure the person that sent that message will find those answers quite illuminating. We're going to go ahead and do some Q&A. I'm going to ask you one more. We're going to ask you about aspiring brokers and all. Paul keeps giving me that's the stage sign to cut it short, Bob. And do we have any questions out here from anybody on this esteemed panel that they'd like to ask? Career questions or anything to add at all? Anxious to get to lunch, aren't you? So, Paul, okay, Paul. Don't put the hook in just yet, okay. Bob Seger said in Night Moves, I wish I didn't know now what I didn't know then.
Yeah.
Okay. So and Paul aptly named this session, what I would tell my younger self. Would you tell your younger self to get into the business that you're in right now if you knew what you knew now?
Without question.
Start with you, Steve.
Without question.
Okay.
It's a fabulous industry. It's been obviously life-changing, but I mean, I started out when I was 19 years old, so it's been my whole life. And without question, I would recommend people get into this industry and dedicate their lives and make a career out of it.
Yeah, as George kind of said earlier, if you can make money doing what you love, you're not really working. Okay, you're just not. George, quickly.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I look at my...
He is, your son is. Okay.
My son is. I'm very fortunate, and very, very fortunate, as I said earlier, and he'll keep me relevant and active as we grow this business and move forward with it. And it was never my plan or his plan for him to be, but as a 20-year-old, I needed him to have a job, and he needed to have a job, and now it morphed into, it's funny because Jeff and our kids went to high school together. We'd be calling each other sometimes, not to talk about boats, about where are they.
To find our kids, yes.
I'll give you a
But I
bench.
never would have imagined that I'd be where I am with him at this point in my life, and that's great. And who knew that all those years he was actually paying attention?
I'll give you an age benchmark. John Burkhart was, when I was teaching English in high school, John Burkhart was a student of mine, believe it or not. I had all the C and D students, and sister, the sister had all the A and B students, but you're in a good group. Jeff?
I absolutely would. With the proviso that it's not easy, and it's hard to start big Gilman yachts. When you start at Allied or HMY where there's walk-ins, it's going to be easier. And back in the late 70s, and I know because I just missed it in '80, Richard Bertram had a training program, and they would take 4 or 5 people a year and train them to be yacht brokers. And there isn't that anymore, except the IYBA's new venture that will be rolling out soon, where
We'll hear about that later.
A yacht brokerage training program that was a going business that was purchased. I'm sure Paul will talk about that more later.
I'm sure he will. Don't ask Paul to talk about anything else, okay? We got plenty on his plate. And Bob, you've got youngsters.
Yeah, you quoted Bob Seger. I'm going to quote Bob Dylan. And Bob Dylan, there's a line in one of his songs that says, there's no success like failure, right? And so I think that in everything that you do, you have to be able, it's like water skiing. If you want to learn how to water ski, you've got to be able to take falling down a bunch of times. And I would definitely tell my younger self that, and hopefully I'll tell my younger self or my young son to get a job with one of you guys, because you know, I'm not sure exactly why I became a lawyer. I think I wanted to remedy injustices in the world, and then I wanted to help build businesses, right? And as a lawyer, you have an important function in doing that, but when I was in school, I remember I wanted to be a journalist for a while, and a friend of mine says to me, do you want to write about the news, or do you want to make the news? So instead of being a journalist, I became a lawyer. But what I didn't realize is, as a lawyer, the dukes over here, they're making all the big deals. I'm writing all the little papers. So hopefully my kid will go to work for one of you guys.
You've done okay, Bob. Come on.
It's a level playing field.
So I just want to say that this has been fascinating to be able to dig into the minds of these guys. And as you develop your careers and as you plan yourself, use these guys as business models and all they've said here today, and take advice from them, because there's no greater source of information than you've just heard. I want to thank Bob, Jeff, George, and Steve. And let's have a nice round of applause for them.
A lot of years here.
Thank you, brother.